Hey, this is James Morgan of the Ghost Jazz Trio. I wanted to make a short video to acknowledge the passing of a good friend and mentor, a great musician, Dean Brown. Passed away on January 26th, and he leaves behind his wonderful wife, Ruth, and he is no longer with us. And I wanted to just make a short video and let everyone know that back in July, Dean and I started working on a new album that's going to be actually released this year. And back in July, Dean had asked me about some songs that he had heard me playing in the studio when I was recording my last album, Groove and Smooth, which he produced, co-wrote many of the songs, and actually played on the album. Does a great acoustic guitar solo on Spanish Seas. Recommend you go and listen to it. It's a great production. And in fact, the album finished number 73 on the top 100 smooth jazz albums of the year of 2023, of the top 100 at number 73. So you can go to smoothjazz.com and check out the chart, the list of albums that made it. So that's from 92 reporting stations around the world. Had about 6,000 plus spins. Really great album, and Dean does all the rhythm guitar work on that album, and I'm joined by Nathan Brown on bass and Chase Pato on the keyboards and Trace Hodgins on drums, and it was engineered by Alan Sanderson. So that was great. Anyway, I sent him the songs, and we chose 5 of, I think I sent him about 8, and we chose 5 songs. And a brief biohistory of me, that I had been playing jazz fusion since the 70s when I studied under Bill Connors, learning technique. And I'm self-taught, I don't read, but I did learn technique and some other things from Bill. And I've always played fusion and been a band leader for decades. And I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs. So I told him, there are fusion songs that I've, been writing, and I haven't played my solid body in about 5 years. I've been playing the contemporary jazz and got my Pat Metheny hollow body, and been playing that. And as you know, musicians out there, it's really hard to transition from solid body to back and forth. Acoustic guitar and all that. In fact, Al DeMille is doing a tour right now where he's playing his solid body he hasn't played in like 40 years or so. So anyway, I sent the songs to Dean. Dean picked 5 of them, and then he said, this music reminds me of the 70s kind of fusion compositions, and I really like to work with you, and we should put an album out. And I said, great, sounds great, let's do it. So he said the only 2 people he thought that could really shine on this album, considering what I told him how I wanted the songs to sound, a lot of imagery and kind of a relaxed, mindful kind of vibe. And he picked Gary Husband for drums and keyboards. So Gary Husband's play is on the album, acoustic piano, electric piano, and synthesizer. And Hadrian Farad on bass. Basically it'll sound like more instruments. I have rhythm guitar in there I'm tracking, then I'll track my solos. Gary, same thing with keyboards and doing synthesizer melodies. But anyway, Dean and I were working on the songs, and he would send me texts telling me that he was feeling fatigued, and be patient with him because he gets tired. And I wasn't really thinking about it then. Maybe thought he had a flu or a cold, but then he, I think it was in August, he told me that he thought he had illness called something Barre. I can't think of the name, B-A-R-R-E. And Epstein-Barr, I think it was. And he said sometimes it can mimic other things. He was going in for tests. So we had scheduled Gary, husband, he was going into the studio in London. And that same day, Dean was going in for tests, and he was kind of worried because he wanted to be able to give Gary some instruction and things like that, but you know, he didn't need much, trust me. So anyway, Dean went in. He said he didn't know how long he'd be in for tests or when they release him, and he ended up staying there since around September all the way through to his passing. And at one point, Dean was in a lot of pain, saying he was laying on the couch a lot. We would text each other daily because we were watching a lot of tennis, and the tennis season was coming to a close. And of course texting about the album, and he was telling me that he was getting really tired. He wasn't going up to teach up in Los Angeles. He would go up once a week and teach up there, and also do Zoom teaching. And so then about when we were getting ready to do the mock-ups, which Dean charted all the songs, and one song in particular he said was probably one of the most difficult songs he's ever charted in his life, Eyes of Truth. And I like a lot of different tempo changes, and so there were a lot, and but he did it. And so we were on our way. We would drive back and forth to, in my car. I'd pick him up and we'd drive down to the studio, San Diego, and record. And so we went down to do the mock-ups. I was going to do all my rhythm tracks just in one day, get everything done. And so he told me that you know, he was tired and he was in pain, but he wanted to go down there. I said, hey Dean, you know, we can wait, there's no rush. Album isn't going to come out till next year, 2024. And he said, no, this album, you know, schedules have to be followed, and the show has to go on. He says, and we have obligations to Hadrian and Gary to get them the materials they need to get the album done. Because at this point he didn't know if, you know, what was going on with him. So I said, when did you want to do this? And I was talking to him around 10 in the morning. He says, pick me up at 1. And I was like, oh, okay, so today we're going. And he goes, one thing, if you don't mind helping me in and out of the car. And I was like, okay, you know, I didn't think much of it. So anyway, I went to pick up Dean, and Ruth, his wife, actually helped him out to the car. And he was, you know, shuffling at a very low pace, slow pace, just one foot in front of the other, and she was holding on to him and helping him. And I basically had to help him sit down into the seat. I picked up his legs and put him in the car. It was like, you know, helping an elderly person in their 70s or 80s. He was very weak, a lot of pain, but he wanted to get this done. So I buckled him in, got my side, we drove, and we would always talk for the 20-minute drive there and back. And on the way there, he just said, James, he goes, I said, you know, Dean, we really, you know, we don't need to do this. It's not a rush. And then, of course, you know, what he said earlier, he was adamant about it. And he says, just do me a favor, James. He goes, no matter what happens with my what I'm going through, I want you to have my back and make sure this album gets finished. And he said, I'm really, you know, this album is very dear to me. It brings me back to the days when I was listening to the musicians that inspired me to play and getting into fusion, and when I was in school. And I said, yeah, of course, you know, I'll do that. And he said, and also, you know, the title song, A Soul in Time, which was the name I came up with for the album. It's kind of prophetic in a way, because, you know, I look at Dean as a soul in time. We're all souls in time, if you think about it. So he said, I'd really like Eric Marienthal to, I think this song would sound great with Eric Marienthal playing sax, doing unison melody. And because I had told him I thought maybe marimbas or flute or sax, and he goes, I was thinking about what you said, and I think Eric Marienthal would just sound beautiful on the song, and it would really mean a lot to me if he played on it, but don't send him the song until it's mixed, done with Gary and Hadrian, and to see if he would like to be on it. I said, sounds great, I love that idea. So we went down to the studio. He was in a lot of pain. I helped him in. We got all the mock-ups together. I had done my due diligence and worked on all the songs and got all my rhythm parts down with my hollow body, Pat Metheny's signature guitar, and then we recorded it, and he was really appreciative that I'd done my homework because we didn't have to be there that long. It was like 1 or 2 takes at the most, and he was actually really surprised, which was, you know, made me happy. So anyway, we got back in the car. On our way back, he said again, James, I just want you to, you know, no matter what happens, make sure this album gets finished. And I said, well, let me know what the results are when you do your tests and all that. So anyway, so it turned out that he had tested for, well, I went in to see him at the first hospital, visit him, and he didn't look that good. He was laying in bed, and they were doing the tests and said that they had found cancer in all of his organs, and other very aggressive, and you know, which is very hard to hear. And I asked Ruth, I said, you know, I hope, is everything going to be okay? And she kind of looked at me like, we hope so. So anyway, I talked with him for a while, and then he started getting tired and a little annoyed because he was getting tired, cranky, so I left. And then I didn't really hear much from him with texts and other things because, you know, he was going through a lot. He was drugged and sleeping and dealing with a lot of the pain. And so meanwhile, I was communicating with Hadrian and Gary, and we were continuing on with the album. And then I found out that he was transferred to another hospital, and that he was in the ICU on a respirator, and he was having a bout with pneumonia, some respiratory infection. So anyway, I guess that kind of passed, and I got a text from him out of the blue, and he said, could you please bring a flash drive of what you have done so I could listen to it, and by Christmas. And so I told Gary and Hadrian, and we got everything done, but I wasn't able to get it to him until the 29th of December 2023. I went to drop it off at the hospital. Ruth came out and said, you know, if you'd like to come in and say hello in the ICU. I said, yeah, absolutely. And I went in there, and as you would expect, it's an ICU unit with a lot of people that are, you know, terminally ill and things like that. And he was laying in a bed, and he had a tube in his, going down his throat to help him breathe, and he was just laying there. And to be honest with you, when I looked at him, his face seemed very calm and different than when he was going in the pain. You know, he was grimacing a lot and stressed when I saw him the last time in the last hospital and so forth. But he seemed calm, and I don't know, it's just, there was almost a beauty about his face. And so I dropped the flash drive off and told him how much everyone loves him, and we had done a GoFundMe page and generated, I didn't tell him that, but we had done that. In fact, I had contacted Eric Marienthal and said, because he had talked to Dean about doing a page if things got worse. Dean was in Japan, and I said, look, I think it's time to do that. And he goes, wow. He goes, I was just talking to him a couple of weeks ago. He really didn't know what was going on, but I said, no, it's at that point. So he contacted Ruth. They set up the page, and we generated about $100,000, $104,000 in about 30 days. And everybody was donating. Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, I mean, the list goes on. So that was done. And so I'm telling Dean, you know, how much I loved and cared for him, and, you know, appreciated his, you know, who he is, and his friendship, and, you know, things you would say to somebody that you see there. And there's Dean right there behind me, up there, in our last recording, over my shoulder. And So I talked a little bit, and Ruth told me that she could tell he was smiling because his eyes, you could really just see his eyes. They would kind of squint, when someone smiles. So that was really beautiful to see, and so I left, and I thought about him all the way home, and so on and so forth. So now, a couple weeks later, I hadn't heard anything, and I was texting, to see how he was, and then I texted about a week ago, or a couple days before he passed, and Ruth said that he's gone worsened, he's in an unresponsive state, which hit me really hard. And then I let Gary and Hadrian know, and then for some reason on Friday night I woke up at 2 in the morning, and I sleep straight through usually, but I woke up at 2 and I got up and used the restroom, and I decided to lay there a bit and try to go back to sleep, and all of a sudden as I was falling asleep, this voice came to me and said, "James, thank you for your friendship." And I was like, I heard this voice on my head, and it was like, it felt like Dean's presence was in my room, and I'm laying there, and he was like, the music lives on, and blah blah, we had this like conversation, and so I kind of came out of my REM sleep. It was about 2:10, 2:15, and for some reason I felt like he was talking to me because he had gone. So I sent a text at that time to Ruth and saying, is it true that Dean has passed? Because I felt like he was telling me he has passed, and I didn't hear anything back. Next day I got up, and social media and this and that, Dean had passed, and so very sad to hear. He's a great musician, great person, really gentle, beautiful person, and I just want everyone to know that Gary, myself, Hadrian, and Eric Marienthal, who will be on the album playing on the title song, we're going to continue to put this beautiful piece of Dean's last musical works out there. And the album, he only had 2 rules for music, putting an album out: that it be beautiful and feel good. And I think we're achieving it on this album. So I want everyone to look for the release of the album, A Soul in Time, a Dean Brown production. And this album is really a tribute to Dean. It's not my album. The album's called Morgan Husband Farad, A Soul in Time, a Dean Brown production, but it's now turned into the last body of work that Dean was working on, and he passed in such a short time, just 5 or 6 months from the time we started the album. And I want people to definitely listen to the music and appreciate this last body of work, and all the royalties, obviously, that go to Dean on the co-written songs will go to Ruth, but also if the album is purchased, part of the proceeds obviously will go to Ruth as well, and then of course spins on the radio and all that, so he'll get royalties from that. So I want everyone to look for that album to come out, and I'll keep everyone updated, so you can subscribe to the YouTube channel for updates. Follow, it's under the Ghost Jazz Trio, which is a band that I started in 2017, but came out with the first album in 2020, Invisible Time, and then the following 3 albums, On the Level and Dreams Above, and then the first production of Dean's working together with me, Groove and Smooth. So enjoy those albums. You can go to the ghostjazztrioband.com, and also on that, in the Ghost store, there's a couple snippets of the new upcoming album. It's not the final mix, but I was getting a lot of messages. People were excited about the album coming out. So it's a jazz fusion album. Dean Brown production, helped write the songs. They're beautiful songs. You're going to love them. 5 beautiful songs. And again, I'm going to miss my friend Dean. I'm still going to be thinking about him, obviously, because I'm working on the album and I want to do everything I can. He told me to work on new lexicons, which means basically put more sound into my repertoire, my tools, and get a flow. He told me just get a nice flow, because this album isn't like a hard, heavy in your face, like Simon Phillips kind of protocol sound. It's more of a lay back, close your eyes and be taken out, Star Trek, out into space sound. So my soloing, and we discussed it, it's not going to be that fast, Matteo Mancuso, everyone's trying to be the fastest guitar player in the world. Has nothing to do with that. Dean was always talking to me about allowing space into the music, and that's one of my philosophies, is that I've always appreciated less is more, being simple, letting it flow and relaxed, not that in your face heavy guitar, ripping up and down, and it's not going to have that Holdsworth that everyone seems to be influenced by sound. It's going to have my sound. It's going to have his sound because of the compositions, and it's original. And I have my own voice, and now that Gary and Hadrian have told their story with the songs to my rhythm tracks, now I'm going to tell my story soloing with Dean's presence in my heart, in my mind, as I'm playing. I want it, to be a conduit for what he wanted, and what we both envisioned this album to be. So again, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on Facebook, the Ghost Jazz Trio, and then also on Twitter and Instagram, Ghost Jazz Trio, James Morgan. I'm the founder and band leader. I play with a lot of different drummers and a couple different drummers and bass players, with doing live shows, mostly corporate. But again, I just wanted to let everyone know that Dean has passed. I'm sure a lot of you have heard by now, and listen to his music on streaming platforms, and go to YouTube, watch his videos. He was a animated, magnetic personality on stage when he played. I used to tell him, I said, you look like Joe Cocker when you're the old singer, when you were on stage playing, because he has kind of a spastic presence on there, which is great. It's amazing. A lot of jazz players you go and see, and they just sit there and in their own world almost. But he was engaging with the audience, and you felt like he was playing to you. And just a great musician. He elevated my, just being around him and doing the last album with him, and conversations has elevated me as a musician, as a person, and also as a guitarist. He really validated a lot of my playing is, because as players we don't know where we are. We're just a ship or a boat out in the big sea, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of guitar players out there, and a lot of them are influenced or trying to sound like other people, or transcribing other people and playing their music. But I've always stuck to my own original stuff, and my philosophy has always been, why practice all those years to play other people's music? I mean, you find your voice, and then if you have a story to tell, you tell it. And if people like your story, they're going to listen to you. It's not about being the best guitarist in the world. It's not about being the best composer. It's just about being yourself, and hopefully you get enough people that like you. And I've been fortunate. My last 3 albums were nominated for Best Jazz Album of the Year. I'm currently at number 2. The album's currently at number 2, Groove and Smooth, on the Roots report, on the Smooth Jazz charts, and number 43 on the regular charts. Finished number 70 or 44 on the jazz charts, and it's finished 73 on the 2023 annual Smooth Jazz charts. So I've been very fortunate to have known Dean, and I, you know, my condolences to his family. And again, thanks for watching the video. Sorry for the rambling, but I just wanted to leave my message out there that'll be there long after I'm gone, just to acknowledge my man over my shoulder there, Dean Brown. What a wonderful human being he was, and it's such a tragic loss. And I look forward to making sure that this album comes out and people know that, you know, this is Dean's last work. And again, thanks for watching, and talk to everybody soon. Thanks.